Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in 1 minute. We're just going to allow people who are just realizing it's 5 o'clock to get on. Great. Well, looks like we are getting a robust group building here, and I am certain it will continue to build as we move through, as it always does. My name is Kim Schultz, and I'm the Director of Interreligious Engagement and Public Projects here at CTS, and I have the great honor to welcome you to our first Wednesday gathering of the year. Insert applause here. Yes. We are very, thanks, Wilder. We are thrilled to begin hosting these important opportunities for engagement and community and connection and learning that we call Wednesday gatherings. This year, they've been shifted, as you notice, because you're here right now, to a 5 p.m. fully virtual monthly gathering. So if you haven't already marked that in your memory banks or your calendars, mark. It is a first Wednesday of every month, 5 p.m. fully virtual gathering. And we hope that you've seen what's coming ahead, which is a very exciting lineup for the next few Wednesdays. We'll share that at the end. So we hope that you will plan to join us regularly as your schedule allows, and to know that there will also be, these will also be recorded and available on our homepage of our CTS website if you happen to have to miss one. But we are very thrilled today to start off, which seems apropos, with our president, Dr. Brad Braxton, leading us in a conversation, in a dialogue today about entitled Dangerous. Oh, I always mess this up and I should have written it down. Daring faith in dangerous times. I sometimes like to flip it, and that's not what we want to say. Daring faith in dangerous times, 170 years and counting, as we at CTS are celebrating our 170th anniversary. So we look forward to that dialogue and discussion with Dr. Braxton. But first, as is a tradition, we all, especially at 5 o'clock, have come from lots of different places and lots of different things and lots of different feelings. And today has proven to be as difficult of a day as many have been for us, of faith and conscience and goodwill. And so we are grateful for a moment that we call words of gathering, where we can pause, we can listen, we can maybe center ourselves and bring us into this moment. And oh, I will say, and if you are multitasking, if you cannot, it is obviously very fine to keep your camera off. If you're at all able, it's always nice to see faces. So if it's something that you are able to do, faces are always appreciated. And also reminder of the chat window if you wish to talk to each other, either as a full group or individually, because this is a moment of community for us as well. So as I was saying before I so rudely interrupted myself, words of gathering, where we not only get a moment to center ourselves, we also get to learn about the huge diversity of which we are at CTS, spiritually and in all the ways. And so we hope to learn something about that diversity through a particular and individual lens. And today, Wilder Carson has agreed to share our words of gathering. So I will pass it to you, Wilder. You can introduce yourself as you wish and then take it from there. And I'm very grateful for you being here and everybody.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, excited to be here. I am an MDiv student, and I've been working on my MDiv since 2020, but I think I may be within a year of finishing. And I I'm here tonight representing that I am Buddhist, but I also do consider myself interfaith. I was raised Catholic, and I retain um, a lot of the spirit of that. Uh, but I wanted to share um, this sort of theme of times like these. And in terms of what grounds me as a Buddhist in times like these is the Buddhist concept of no self, which is often misunderstood, especially in the West, and may scare people because it may sound like the goal of Buddhism is to erase yourself, and that's not it. What it really means is no separate self, which means that we are all connected. Um, the truth of it is really seeing humanity as one. And a key part of that is compassion, which seems hard to practice, especially when conflict and oppression are persistent in our history. But compassion also needs to be persistent, and it's represented across faiths and even secularly. And I want to share a few different things from different places. First, from Buddhism, I want to share the Brahmavihara, or the four immeasurable attitudes, um, dating, origin back 2,500 years ago. The four immeasurable attitudes. The first is metta, or loving kindness. The second is karuna, or compassion. Third, mudita, or appreciative joy, and upekkha, or equanimity. And if you think about this being a topic 2,500 years ago, uh, it gives some perspective on where we are now. Uh, Also, from Rumi, a 13th century scholar, writer, poet, and Islamic historian, talked about the 7 advices, and I'll just read them out. In generosity and helping others, be like the river. In compassion and grace, be like the sun. In concealing others' faults, be like the night. In anger and fury, be like the dead. In modesty and humility, be like the soil. In tolerance, be like the ocean. Either you appear as you are, or be as you appear. Next, sort of shooting forward to between the 19th and 20th centuries in Western Europe with uh, Rainer Maria Rilke from Sonnet 4. You who let yourselves feel, enter the breathing that is more than your own. Let it brush your cheeks as it divides and rejoins behind you. Blessed ones, whole ones, you where the heart begins. You are the bow that shoots the arrows, and you are the target. Fear not the pain. Let its weight fall back into the earth. For heavy are the mountains, heavy the seas. The trees you planted in childhood have grown too heavy. You cannot bring them along. Give yourselves to the air, to what you cannot hold. Rilke comes from a Christian tradition and was very spiritual. Lastly, I want to share a more uh, secular words from 2002 from those sages, the Foo Fighters. I'm a new day rising. I'm a brand new sky to hang the stars upon tonight. I'm a little divided. Do I stay or run away and leave it all behind? It's times like these you learn to live again. It's times like these you give and give again. It's time like these you learn to love again. It's times like these, time and time again. And just ultimately really sitting in the awareness that we are all one, and we have been for thousands of years. And for thousands of years, we've been working on compassion. Thanks.
Oh, Wilder, thank you. Thank you for setting us up like that and for the surprising wisdom of the Foo Fighters. Um, we need to find joy. Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here. Now, as I mentioned at the top, we are starting this first Wednesday gathering as the school year has recently started, the academic year has recently started. And we are theming it with the 170-year anniversary of Daring Faith in Dangerous Times. I got it right this time. And I am very pleased that our esteemed president has agreed to lead us, to speak with us and lead us in a discussion. As most everyone here must know, Dr. Brad Braxton is the president and professor of public theology here at CTS, and I pass it to you, Dr. Braxton.
Thank you so much, Kim. Greetings, CTS family, and happy 170th anniversary. Permit me to say what I say frequently at CTS. I am persuaded that the two sweetest words in the English language, when they are sincerely uttered, are the words, thank you. So permit me to say afresh to our community, thank you. I am very grateful to our board, our leadership team, our staff, our faculty, our students, our alumni, our donors, and our community partners. And as we go forth in this anniversary celebration, we pray that God and the ancestors will be pleased as we steward the holy legacy bequeathed to us. I have titled my reflections tonight, Higher Education, the Cosmic Lesson Plan. There is a lie from the pit of hell that whispers, we don't need institutions. We hear the skepticism. We understand why people might not trust institutions. Let me be plain. We do need institutions. We just need holy, life-giving institutions, not those that are harmful, predatory, or hollowed out by fear. This is why the most important social justice work I am called to now is working tirelessly with our team to secure a vibrant future for CTS. Because churches, temples, mosques, seminaries, divinity schools, and courageous educational and moral and faith institutions are designed by the divine as instruments of higher education. They know, let me say it better, we are the curriculum God writes on the soul of the world. Now, a word on focus. As you listen to us, and now to me in particular, please remember that when you hear, for example, the word church, for I will lift a text in a moment from the Christian scripture. When you hear the word church, I mean by that religious community, seminary, or moral and educational institution, or those with secular worldviews that are centered in justice and well-being. So please do not get caught up in the particularity of the language from one scriptural tradition and miss that I have an expansive moral vision in my reflections tonight. You will also hear an unapologetic focus on Black faith and life. That is entirely appropriate because some of CTS's founders and first students were abolitionists and conductors on the Underground Railroad. Permit me to ask respectfully a piercing question. Do we truly understand at Chicago Theological Seminary the radical heritage we are stewarding at this institution? Some of the people who founded this seminary were passionately devoted to the absolute dethroning of the systemic, brutal oppression of Black people in the United States. Since abolition is in our DNA at CTS, this seminary views the flowering of Black faith and life as part and parcel of the larger human emancipation project. Therefore, in a progressive abolitionist space like CTS, we should never have to apologize or engage in special pleading for centering Blackness. The centering of Blackness is not an abdication of our other essential commitments, such as interreligious engagement or our devotion to LGBTQ plus communities. Often in progressive spaces, I've noticed that if you center Blackness and you have other commitments, people will say, well, what about those other commitments? And I often want to say to people, have you ever traveled to the continent? Oh, and by that, I don't mean the European continent, because that's the way we talk about it, don't we, in the academy? If you do continental philosophy, we know what that means. When people say they do continental philosophy, my first question is, which country have you gone to in Africa? Too often, even in progressive spaces, we have primarily defined ventures such as interreligious engagement or even LGBTQ plus moral and civic equality through a white lens. As an abolitionist school, we should raise a concern not when Black faith and life is centered, but when it is not centered. This radical history mandates that we commit ourselves fully to the cosmic assignment of this seminary, to be an instrument of higher education. I am by training a New Testament scholar and homiletician. So again, I offer no apologies for taking a biblical text as my launching pad. Permit me to shine the spotlight on a profound verse in Ephesians chapter 3 in the New Testament, verse 10. I read from the Revised Standard Version. That through the church, the manifold wisdom of God might now be made known to the principalities and powers in the heavenly places. Knowledge is the prime need of the hour. Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, the venerable African-American college president, proclaimed this truth against the backdrop of a nation that conspired to create compulsory ignorance among a people, and ignorance designed to maintain a financially lucrative slaveocracy masquerading as democracy. But prophetic religious communities, those resilient voices, have always stressed the necessity of education. In particular, the best of Black faith and life that we celebrate, for example, next week in our Rooks lecture, has always been a noble servant of knowledge. When white supremacy preached racial inferiority, many Black religious communities thundered that all people are made in the image of God. That's why a fearless cadre of saints gathered in 1855 to begin the audacious, defiant work of this very seminary, this CTS, our CTS. What a declaration of independence. When Jim Crow slammed the doors of schools, Black religious communities became a surrogate center of wisdom. In those hallowed halls, many people learned to read, to organize, to acquire the social skills necessary for navigating a world hostile to Black flesh. We must remember, and I've been thinking very deeply in these days about that roll call of luminaries, folks like Daniel Payne and Mordecai Johnson and Benjamin Mays and Nannie Helen Burroughs. But alongside them, even as we celebrate our founders at CTS, we must also lift up, in particular, those courageous, creative, Black religious sisters, mothers, and missionaries. They were the venture capitalists of freedom. Those Black religious women. And I recently told an institutional leader, you have not been discerned until your soul has been discerned by a Black religious woman. Those Black religious women paid tuition by washing and ironing, sewing and frying. They would tie money up in handkerchiefs, and they put that change in the handkerchief and tie them up in knots that only they could loose. And then they would store them under mattresses, and when a young person needed the coin of the realm to climb the mountain of education, those religious women would lovingly untie the knots, persuaded that the change in the handkerchief would result in a big change in the world. As we have prepared for our anniversary now for weeks and months, I've shared often with our team, since CTS was founded in 1855, we have a moral responsibility to think about the immediate years after our founding. In particular, that 10 to 20 year arc that included the United States Civil War. After the carnage of the Civil War that ended in 1865, 10 years after the founding of CTS, many Black religious communities invested significant capital in the dissemination of knowledge. After the Civil War, Black church folk in particular, with the assistance of white Christian missionaries, built and supported colleges and training institutes. Without the tireless support of Black religious leaders, there would have been no Howard and Hampton, no Morehouse and Morgan State, no Spelman and Shaw. But why, in my reflections to launch our anniversary, do I focus on education? I focus on education because religious communities, and that means this seminary, our CTS, religious communities have one unshakable purpose. Religious communities are supposed to be agents of higher education. Now, for some, higher education means passing out diplomas on the human level. I keep insisting to anyone who will listen to me that understanding is too low. If that's all we think it is at CTS, we are, in the words of the historian Carter G. Woodson, victims of miseducation. For the full picture, we must consult Ephesians 3:10. This text asserts that the central purpose of religious communities is to make God's manifold wisdom known to the principalities and powers. The principalities and powers are not merely the bad people you see on the news. The principalities and powers refer to the forces that oppose God and goodness. Evil has more dimensions than just the anthropological. Let me be abundantly clear, as I have shared with our staff and faculty in these days leading to our anniversary. Sitting in the president's office at 1407 East 60th Street just a few weeks ago, I had my most recent visitation of the ancestors. Yeah, I'm down with religious pluralism. I say to anybody who asks me, my Africanity is far more important to me than my Christianity, and it's been that way for about 30 years now. Yes, the ancestors visited me, and they told me to remind you, in transcendent realms, higher than human awareness, imperceptible forces plot iniquitous insurrections against God's commonwealth. God commissions religious communities, you and me, and our fellowship here at CTS to educate those evil forces. Higher education occurs when we claim our cosmic assignment to instruct the powers, teaching them that God's wisdom will prevail, teaching them that goodness and love, radically inclusive love, will be the final words. May I be abundantly clear? We at CTS have not exhausted our duties once we have educated students and ministered to people. And as important as charitable acts and social justice are, they are not the sum total of our mission. God has laid upon this seminary a ministry of higher education. We are supposed to be for the cosmos a living, breathing, disruptive lesson of God's diverse wisdom. To do theological education with respect to its invisible, intangible, but very real cosmic implications, now that's high church. Better yet, that's high religion. To assemble, whether on campus or on Zoom, in a classroom, or a social justice protest in a parking lot, to assemble believing that our fellowship disrupts demonic designs and teaches God's wisdom in heavenly places. Hey, y'all, that's higher education. Whenever I roll out my cosmic theology, I'm mindful that this language of principalities and powers may sound like first century passé prose. I know that part of Chicago Theological Seminary. We are very proud, rightly so, of our heritage concerning intellectual rigor. Some skeptics declare that we can't take this cosmological language seriously. They scoff at it, especially as heirs of the scientific revolution. But I say to you, the science of quantum physics reveals the poetic plausibility of the rhetoric in Ephesians 3. Quantum physics asserts that the universe is teeming with invisible, pulsating packets of energy called quanta. These particles move chaotically and erratically from one energy state to another. Hence the expression, a quantum leap. Could the principalities and powers be theological poetry for a cosmological actuality? Could they be erratic quantum energy that has momentarily leapt into a state of rebellion against God's purposes? At the cosmic level, evil is misaligned quantum energy. Energy divinely intended for righteousness that has chosen to support wickedness. Every episode of thinly veiled bigotry, every institutional corruption, every act of corporate greed is not simply a singular human act. These are the latest incursions of misaligned, parasitic, cosmic energy that unfortunately continues to find willing human host bodies to enable its iniquity to enter the realm of our expression. But here is the gospel. What kind of seminary president would I be if I wasn't packing some good news? The choices that quantum energy makes are not changeless. Quantum energy can be redirected. If God's wisdom, mediated through religious, educational, and moral spaces like CTS, can convert people like us who are simply configurations of quantum energy, why cannot that wisdom convert non-material quantum energy, also known as the principalities and powers, when we do religion right? We become a living lesson in higher places. Our ministry of higher education might so illuminate the powers that they take a quantum leap from wickedness to righteousness. Our ancestors, those who founded CTS 170 years ago, did not have the language of quantum physics on their lips, but their lives embodied its lesson. They inserted their story of oppression and triumph into the Bible's cosmological language. They believed that the energy of their preaching and praying, their singing and shouting would somehow alter a future they would not live to witness. Don't you all realize we are that future? Our founders moved in the subjunctive mood, the grammatical mood of possibility. They believed more in the possibility of future progress than in the indicative mood of their present pain. So what does this mean for us, the heirs of this profound legacy? It means as we go forward at CTS, we must ask another piercing and perhaps irreverent question. Are we frustrating God's lesson plans? Religious and educational institutions frustrate God's lesson plans when we perpetuate the vicious divisions of the culture, hostility around ethnicity, class, sexual identity, blue state versus red states, the doo-wop generation against the hip-hop generation. And one of the things that I'm wrestling with very deeply in my own moral journey is the sometimes wicked way that progressive institutions and progressive religious leaders comport themselves as if we are the only ones who have an answer. Is at times even our progressive orthodoxy an idol god? For all of the good that we celebrate in CTS, has CTS always, especially in its institutional life, been on the right side of every moral question? Did not the ancestors trouble me and say, yes, trumpet your successes, but also come with a contrite heart? Higher education involves unity in spaces, religious spaces, the society. Unity is God's grand design for the universe. We got to break down some dividing walls, and we must raise our expectations. CTS is so much more than a building, although that 70,000 square foot campus of ours is majestic. Every church house, every seminary, every religious community should in one way or another be a divine schoolhouse. The saints who founded and nurtured this house knew they were building a cosmic schoolhouse. And as a cosmic schoolhouse founded in the midst of oppression, those saints did what they used to do in the country schoolhouse. If any of you are from the country or small communities like I am, I was raised in Salem, Virginia, in those gorgeous Blue Ridge Mountains in the western part of Virginia. I've seen many of a small schoolhouse. And what I love about those old schoolhouses is that early in the morning, they ding, 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 they rang the bell. Ding, ding, school's in session. Principalities and powers, we're going to teach you how to love. Ding, ding, school's in session. Principalities and powers, we're going to teach you how to forgive. Ding, ding, school's in session. We're going to teach you how to submit to God and goodness. Ring the bell of higher education. That's what I felt the ancestors asked me to say to us afresh. Ring the bell until liberty echoes throughout earth and eternity. Ring the bell until rebellious quantum energy is redirected. Ring the bell until the powers learn their lesson. Ring the bell until the principalities and powers shout. Redeemed! Redeemed! We have been redeemed. Amen.
Thank you, President Braxton. Powerful message at a very consequential time. Did you want to, I want to give people just time to sit with it as well, and digest. I know there are some questions you have for the group. I also wonder if there's some questions that the group has for you. Or I might choose one to share with the group and start there, unless you wanted to go in a different direction, President Braxton.
Thank you so much for curating this space, Kim, in this moment. And my sense as Kim and I were talking, as I was turning my third year fresh to this quantum theology, which again is very much a part of who I've been. This is how I teach New Testament. This is how I think about preaching. I literally say to preachers when I do introduction to preaching, if you're preaching only to Sister Washington on the third row, then your homiletic is far too low. Right? That I literally have spent decades now trying to raise up folks who are preaching at multiple levels, anthropological and cosmological. So as I was wrestling afresh, I shared with Kim, I thought it appropriate to flip the script for just a moment. And you'll have to pardon me because I'm just a frustrated professor, right? My employment engagement with the Board of Trustees at CTS only allows me to teach one course a year. And some of the sustainability work that we're doing has not allowed me to get into the classroom. So you'll have to just pardon me because I am a member of the faculty. So I came armed, as Kim knows, I think I have 6 questions for you all. I'm like, what is this thing where lecturers and preachers come and we do, you see how hard I'm working and sweating like a honey baked ham? And then you're going to ask me some questions? No, it shouldn't work that way. I've already done the work. I want to ask you some questions. And I'm not going to even charge you tuition. Well, let me talk to Karen Walker, our Vice President for Finance and Administration. So I'll leave it in your hands, Madam Kim, because you know I have a whole lot of questions I want to ask. But of course, I'm always down to receive questions as well.
I'm going to start with one here of your 6 that you shared, and folks can thank me for choosing an easier one versus a harder one in the classroom of Wednesday gathering. And I'm going to throw it in the chat. Reclaiming the institution. I think this is an interesting place to start, especially at the marking of 170th anniversary. The sermon asserts that the lie from hell is that we don't need institutions. We hear this a lot. What is one concrete action CTS or another religious, ethical, educational community can take? One concrete action CTS can take in the next year to prove it is a wholly life-giving institution that merits the wider community's trust and support. And that's an easier one.
Ding, ding, school is in session.
Throw in your thoughts. You throw them in the chat. You can unmute yourself and share them with the group. Let's actually try to have an actual conversation with each other.
Absolutely. Let's chop it up. Come on now. This is CTS. And I'm even curious for you all to dig into the architecture of the question. What's the logic of the question? What's underneath it? And then what are your responses to the question? It's terrible being a frustrated professor. It is just so terrible.
Can I speak?
Please.
You may. I'm sorry, who
Hello?
is this iPhone 91? Can you introduce yourself? iPhone
This
91.
is Nolan Shaw.
Nolan. Okay, great, Nolan. Thanks for telling us who you are.
Okay. I'm always curious about walls of partition, walls of separation. And I'm curious about how and in what ways CTS can connect with people who are not even thinking about higher education. What overtures can be made? What hands of welcoming can be extended to people who are hurting and disillusioned with education in general? So I guess my response to the question is a question.
And what a profound question. Let me, if I may, get us started down the path, I hope. And part of what I would say, my dear sibling Nolan, that I was attempting to do even in the performance, right, of what I did tonight was a response to your query. So let me put it in a to-go box. It was the Reverend Dr. Martha Simmons who famously gave me this line. I'm going to give her full credit, but I use it all the time. To do what you said, CTS must increasingly mix some James Brown with our James Cone. That one of the dangers, even of an institution like CTS that has a lot of street cred, is that we sometimes still get caught up in our own efforts to prove ourselves, whether to our mentors, to the University of Chicago, to publishing houses, to the tenure and promotion process. And we forget that when James Brown did his liberation theology, he said, "Say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud." And part of his liberation were the gyrations of his body saying, "I'm no longer willing to be shackled." So Nolan, one of the most profound strictures or walls of partition that exist in the community are politics of decorum that create suspect thinking, especially when minoritized people show up in academic spaces with joy. Right? You're only a serious scholar if you act in a certain way. Where what the Africans who have informed me say that so often we struggle because knowledge is a necessary but not sufficient condition. The Africans, the people I know you are researching and that were part of the diaspora, that is part of your dissertation work, those folks were looking for wisdom. And wisdom is also comfortable with joy. So part of what I was doing, even in the performance of the sermon, right? And I held that thing back. So, I mean, that was like fourth gear, man. I was just like, because it's on Zoom and I'm like, whatever. But like, when I really have preached that sermon across the country, I mean, man. So part of the dividing wall, are we comfortable with a kinesthetic and a somatic theology that is willing to accompany those who are closest to the pain and get beyond a disembodied academic theology that only does from here up and is not willing to engage the totality of a suffering and yet thriving humanity?
Beautiful. Zachary, you have a question or a comment, I think.
Yes, thanks, Ken. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, hi. My name is Zachary, and
Yes.
oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, great. My name is Zachary, and I'm a second-year Harris School of Public Policy student, and I've been interested in the Chicago Theological Seminary since I first came to campus. I got lost, and it's on 60th Street, and I was like, what building is this? I've been into the divine my entire life, and always had prospects of going to divinity school. But I learned of a theological seminary, so I wanted to research what it's all about. And so this is my first Wednesday gathering that I've been able to attend.
Wonderful.
Live. I've watched a few of them online, and I'm glad I came to this one. This is really great. I had a question for the president.
Yes.
Your speech was very impactful, and in particular when you started to talk about this new term you gave me, quanta, and energy, and tying all of that into the divine. But I took a note here. Something that you said is that evil is misaligned energy.
Yes.
And I wanted to know, there were so many thoughts I was thinking about when you said that, when you came to that part of your speech. And what I know from the Chicago Theological Seminary is that it has a long history of civil rights advocacy. And I know that the underlying issue in civil rights advocacy is, well, probably this new term that I learned, misaligned energy. So I'd like to know, how can a person or an institution, well, perhaps like the Chicago Theological Seminary, what are some methods that you could utilize in order to, well, I guess, align energy so that the evil energy does not prevail?
You are going to make me earn my salary tonight, aren't you, kind sir? Thank you. No, Zachary, thank you. And let me just be very clear with you. First of all, if you're at Harris and I mean, that's not even a half a mile. So we've already claimed you. And so just know you're never going to get away from us. So just know, okay, you're part of the family, all right? And you're a sibling now. So shame on you for coming to the Wednesday gathering. Now you're part of us, right? And I'll share as much with the dean of Harris. So just let him know we're going to co-opt you. So thank you for the richness of your question. And let me begin first by sharing, and maybe we should have coffee or lunch sometime soon. I would welcome that conversation. I, about a decade ago, was the program officer at the Ford Foundation over the religious portfolio, religion in the public sphere. And much of this work on kind of quantum theology crystallized there for me in my first meeting at Ford, right? And at the time I went to Ford, and this will speak to you, right, as a scholar of public policy, the Ford Foundation at that point had $12 billion under assets, right? That's a pretty hefty checking account. And they were giving away $500 million a year, which is pretty much what they're doing now. In my first meeting, I was with all of the public policy folks, the educational specialists, the lawyers, and I had another visitation of the ancestors, literally in Ford's corporate boardroom. And the ancestors said to me, "You hear the drum, don't you?" So I literally wrote a white paper, right, a thought paper that shaped the funding that I stewarded. And it was about not only policy, but poetry. So part of the reason that Harris and CTS need to be more joined, not just on 60th Street, but in our work, is that sometimes you need the precision of public policy. Other times you need the passion of the poets. Because the most gated neighborhood in the world is the human heart. Oh, I feel like preaching, y'all. I didn't preach earlier. Those were remarks. I feel like preaching, Zachary. And what the civil rights, however we identify that, what one of its challenges was, for important reasons, it did the things in your shop. There were tremendous public policy gains. But when Dr. King and other of the luminaries come to Chicago, and they go to Lawndale and other places, and they find out that the racism and oppression and fascism and or whatever other ism you want to list in the North was actually worse than in the South. It was then that they began to understand there may be some limits to a policy alone approach. There's only some stuff that the poets can do. And I ain't mad at what the policy people do. So my question back to you is, how do we break down what Nolan said a moment ago, the partitions, the dividing walls, where the policy people don't look down on the poets and preachers, and the preachers don't act so self-righteous when they're engaging with the policy folks? We need each other because evil is misaligned at every level. And that's why you need him singing. And that's why William Barber says of the Moral Mondays movement, don't trust no prophets who ain't got no song. And the only reason I didn't sing tonight is I thought coming in this hot preaching, and then if I started singing, I don't know what would happen. We might have to take up an offering and raise some money here tonight. But I also know that at some point, I just need to sit quietly as you take me into the intricacies of the public policy and the legislation you're going to draft to help create new schooling in Chicago public schools and new opportunities. So you see, part of the practice is, how do we, with humility, recognize the strengths and weaknesses of each of our differences and disciplines and modalities and marshal them to create the future that we want, and stop the idolatrous obsession over, for example, a president. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be concerned because he is dangerously destructive, but the ancestors said to me when they visited me, we're losing because we're not building the alternative. And the alternative, Zachary, needs policy people at Harris, and it needs the preachers and the poets at CTS.
Building the alternative. Thank you, President.
Thank you, Dr. Braxton.
Oh, thank you. I'm having too much fun here tonight.
I'll shoot you an email.
I'm looking forward to it. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Zachary, thank you so much. We're glad you're here. And John, I see your hand. I just want to, because we are at 6 o'clock, there are some crucial announcements that I want to get. And then John, I believe President Braxton is happy to stay, as are I'm sure other people, and we can engage your question. But I do know I want to respect people's time who do want to leave at 6. And we have some important things we need to say to you. One of which, another opportunity for Zachary and everyone here is that next week on Wednesday, as part of the 170th celebration, we have the second annual CTS Beyond Symposium, Emerging Scholars, where students are sharing scholarship with us, and lunch. And so we hope that folks will join. It's a hybrid event. You can come in person and have lunch, or you can join virtually. And I think Roxy's going to share the links there. And then I'm going to pass it to Chad, who's going to just mention in brief what's happening about the 170th. And then we're going to go back to John Risto.
Thank you so much, Kim. I'm reminded that CTS truly is a place for rigorous education and deep conversation. If you want to continue this, things like the Beyond Symposium that are happening next week, I've dropped a link of the other events associated with the 107th anniversary. We have a womanist and feminist preaching symposium that's happening Wednesday evening. Thursday night, of course, we have our 170th anniversary celebration reception, as well as the C. Shelby Rooks lecture. And so I invite you all to take a look at that link, and you can see the full suite of events that were happening. Thank you so much, Kim.
Yes, thank you. And now I would love to hear from John.
Just to try and answer the question.
Yes, thank
One
you.
way I think that CTS could break down walls and at the same time give back to the community would be through free online seminars for community leaders. So, for example, spirituality for nonprofit leaders, religion and conflict management. There could be all kinds of topics. And let's say, for example, they would be 10-hour classes, and participants would, the classes could be taught by a combination of staff as well as students, graduate students, PhD students, and participants could receive a certificate, and that would be an excellent way to reinforce the seminary's position as a community leader, and at the same time to give back to the community.
John, you know, we had some brilliant engagement earlier this week, so I feel comfortable saying this to you, and I want you to hear this in love. I'm beginning to really recognize you are a righteous troublemaker. I'm just going to say that out loud with as much love and pride. What a brilliant suggestion. Our esteemed academic dean has heard that. And what I want to share with you, again, without saying more than I can or should, as I did share with you in our brilliant offline conversation this week, a lot of my work now is in this sustainability model, and that there is a model that we are looking at right now with an educational partner that would, we hope, finally alleviate some of the fiscal pressures that CTS has, that we could move more in the direction of what you're talking about, of being of greater service to wider communities, where, again, we're never embarrassed about the fact that we do master's and PhD level work, but there's a kind of dividing line and a partition even there. And it's what I'm right hearing with my third ear. So while we're doing that great rigorous graduate work, do not we also have some higher education responsibilities to other communities? And currently it's challenging because of the business model and a lot of things that we briefly touched on. But no, we are working to make what you're talking about more of a reality. So I am grateful once again, dear sibling, for your righteous troublemaking.
Thank you for that, John. And thank you, President Braxton, for leading us so auspiciously as we launched the year. And what great path forward you have put us on. Yes, you have your hand raised. You may speak.
I'm curious. I need a moment. So Dean Vogt, I need a moment with you maybe after this, because I just wanted to be part of the official record that the conversation was absolutely robust. And as the professor tonight, I was only able to have one of my questions responded to. So I'm not sure if there's some academic misconduct. I don't know what's going on. I need some help, right? Because y'all got to help me. I'm ready to rock and roll, and y'all are trying to cut. Dean Vogt, the faculty, our classes are not an hour long. Why do y'all shackle me like this? What is this? I thought y'all loved me. Can somebody speak to that? I get an hour and everybody else on the faculty gets 2 and 3, 14 times. I mean, like, what's happening? Just somebody answer me that, then I'll trouble you all no more. Dean, talk to me right now, please. I need help.
We can stay on and hear you for another 2 hours if we want.
No, maybe not. Okay.
I don't know.
maybe not.
Scott Haldeman, Professor Haldeman, preach. Yeah, that is the structure, President Braxton. But we now know in future, when you are leading one, we will make it a 90-minute to 2-hour session because there's much to be discussed. Yes.
I'm just saying, I don't get to teach that much. And let me close with this way, and then I'll send it to you, Kim. One of the things that I also hopefully am modeling is joy, laughter. Can I just conclude on a cosmic note? When I presided over my father's funeral, I'm here. I came down south. I'm beaming in from the Blue Ridge Mountains of Southwest Virginia. And so I'm in the space where my father, the most righteous religious leader, most righteous person I've ever known, when I presided over his funeral, and I was in the cemetery, and I'm dropping the dirt on his casket, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, the most raucous laughter I have ever had in my life came over me. The most beautiful laughter I have ever had in the world was in the cemetery when I am burying my father. And the ancestors and the spirit said to me, laughter is God's way of thinking about new life. What laughter is God chuckling at the presumptuousness of death and evil. So in my laughter, I don't want you to miss, I ain't just messing around. My laughter and my joy may be the most potent weapons for tearing down strongholds. Ding, ding! School is in session.
Thank you, Dr. Braxton. Thank you so much all for being here. Please join us on November 5th for a community conversation about immigration. We have some faith-based organization as well as some folks working with Venezuelan immigrants on the ground. And we hope that you will join us for that conversation next month. And we hope that you take words today with you and thoughts and feelings and the joy with you today. Have a great rest of your night.